You know, one thing that could have stopped this or could have cut this off would be a real audit of the election.
Yes.
Had they had any interest in doing that, we could have audited it all by now, and that would have closed the book on this. Now, there are some people out there who would never accept under any circumstances that Trump lost. Yeah. The vast majority of American conservatives are not in that group. Yeah. Were they able to see in black and white, all right, not from judges who are sometimes politically appointed because of politics, not politically appointed. Had they been able to see that in black and white, I think it would have changed things dramatically. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it would have too. And just more going back to the 25,000 troops, I think it speaks to the fact that politicians are always motivated by self-interest. And you can just see it so clearly here. Like like you said, Andrew, when it was other people's lives on the line, when other people in danger, you know, some of the Republicans said the right things, but they didn't really get to work. Yep. And the Democrats were just egging the violence on. But finally, when they're in danger, that's when some action gets taken.
So I want to quickly, we're coming to the end of the segment, but I want to read you guys something that someone sent me earlier today. I actually can't figure out who wrote this. I know who sent it to me, but he didn't write it. But this is a little bit of a different take from what the three of us have talked about just now. Folks will bear with me while I read for just a minute. The title is Green Zone on the Potomac. In Baghdad, the U.S. Embassy complex is a massive fortified area hard on the Tigris called the Green Zone. It's to protect representatives of America's government and its governing class from the barbarians beyond. In advance of Wednesday's inauguration, Washington, D.C. is being turned into the Green Zone on the Potomac. So just who are the barbarians whom the governing class is attempting to exclude from the nation's capital? That's a good question. This could be a particularly grandiose exercise in security theater, meant to convey that the country is under threat from shadowy right-wing insurrectionists, and thereby provide a justification for sweeping, quote, domestic terrorism legislation. That's a chilling thought. Followed by early 21st century equivalents to early 20th century Palmer raids or Garland raids. These directed at American, quote, fascists and white supremacists rather than communists and anarchists in 1919 through 1920. This would bode very ill for our freedom. It could be the death knell, in fact. This could also reveal the governing class's panicked realization that they are heartily hated by a large portion of the populace. We just talked about that. These explanations aren't mutually exclusive. A hated elite, all too conscious of its failings and unpopularity, will, out of self-preservation, engineer crises that justify the employment of the government's vast coercive apparatus to crush those who wish them gone. So that's an interesting thought, that maybe this is actually security theater, and the whole point of this is to show, oh my gosh, look how dangerous all of the Trump supporters are. We had to have 25,000 troops in D.C. just because of how dangerous the Trump supporters are. So that suggests that all of this is just optics. Yeah. It's political optics. What do we think about that?
Yeah, you know, one of my favorite follows on Twitter is a guy named James Lindsay. He talks a lot about, you know, the far left and a lot of their extreme rhetoric. And one of the things he's said in recent weeks is that the left has created this pseudo-narrative about the Capitol incursion, and they're saying that it was some organized white supremacist insurrection that was led by Trump to take over the government. And I've seen so many Democratic
we were going to take over the government with a guy wearing buffalo horns.
Yeah. That was our best.
It's hilarious.
That's who we put forward. Yes. The vast right-wing conspiracy, the best we could come up with was that guy.
It's laughably ridiculous, that narrative. And yet I've seen so many like mainstream Democratic politicians, you know, representatives and senators that have been saying it as if it's the truth.
Oh, yeah.
And then taking Trump out of office for them is like finally overcoming the white supremacist movement. And it's just such a false narrative that it's unbelievable. And this just feeds into that. By having all those troops there, like this letter said, it feeds into that narrative and makes it seem like it was a bigger deal. And It was a big deal. It was a horrible thing that happened at the Capitol, and it shouldn't have happened. But it was not as crazy as they're saying it was.
Yeah, it was a horrible thing that happened. It's not clear to me how big a deal it actually was.
Yes.
I absolutely love the pictures of the rioters standing between the stanchions.
Yeah.
The stanchions are the things
through.
at the movie theater and the bank that keep you in line. That is a heck of a riot.
It's pretty
folks.
orderly.
So, and there's a question of how many of those people, how many of the people who were even in the Capitol were actually interested in doing any kind of harm at all. It seems like actually very few of them were. No, go ahead, and then I have
you
one
also
last
can't
point,
put it past these establishment Republicans to take part in this security theater that you're talking about to get the legislation that they want accomplished. I mean, I know that conservatives are kind of divided on this issue, but we see it in the security state, the surveillance state, and the Patriot Act. There are quite a few conservatives, myself included, who have gotten on board with the idea that what happened in the first decade of this century was atrocious. The power grab from on a bipartisan basis, the power grab in light of 9/11, again, another
You're talking about
major,
like the Patriot Act
yes,
and things like that.
Absolutely. That this is the political class will do anything to aggregate power. And if that means making the constituents out to be domestic terrorists, half of their constituents, they're fine with that. We saw it in the early 2000s in light of 9/11 that they don't care who gets restricted in the general populace as long as they can point out a villain and they can say, we are the hero and we are going to keep you safe.